Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the webinar zone for another MW webinar. My name is Sean Meyer, and I am the Senior Editor for Municipal World. I'm excited to introduce today's webinar, sponsored by PSD Citywide. Our presenter today is Matthew Dawe, who will be discussing the benefits of a digital permitting solution and how PSD Citywide's solution can improve processes and deliver a better overall experience. Without further ado, I will pass things on to Matthew.
Thanks, Sean. And welcome to today's discussion on the rise of ePermitting. My name is Matt Dawe. I'm the founder and CEO of PSD Citywide, and going to be running through today's presentation with you. So today, what we're going to be going through is the rise of ePermitting and common ePermitting drivers, assessing the need for ePermitting, software features to look out for, and a solution built for success as a bit of an agenda for today's session. So first sort of section, common ePermitting drivers. What's made this shift and had this change from paper, walking in, filling out a form, to now folks filling everything out online with some different expectations. So certainly citizens and developers are becoming increasingly frustrated with the permitting processing times. Through some recent studies and notes that we've seen out there, Ontario seems to be taking that 10 to 18 weeks. We have in BC up to 20 weeks to process a permit, and in the United States seeing up to 12 weeks. So the process, there's a greater chance certainly when you're using manual process, legibility concerns, missing information, personnel errors. It is a time for change. The expectations for both internal staff and citizens is definitely moving and shifting towards the digital and ePermitting side of things. So what else is driving this? So population migration and remote work. So baby boomers, two are the two main drivers, baby boomers and remote workers. A lot of baby boomers we're seeing over the last couple of years here, where they're moving out of the rural areas and big cities into smaller communities or municipalities with, that 100,000, the bedroom communities, 100,000 people less, causing significant issues for the smaller cities that aren't quite prepared for the growth that they're seeing. They're selling larger homes in urban areas, getting into their 50s and 60s, wanting to get a house, do a renovation. So all kinds of additional demands for communities that are sort of those basement or bedroom communities for urban centers. Looking at some of the reports out there, by 2025, 60 million baby boomers in the US alone will actually have reached their full retirement age. And they're certainly the ones that are then moving out of the larger cities. The second is the remote workers or work from home. It's something that we're considered, or we looked at that as a piece that's related just to COVID and the pandemic, but it's not necessarily the case. So prior to the pandemic, the percentage of people that worked from home was doubling every 15 years. And some new studies are showing that remote work is expected to nearly double, with 36.2 million Americans working from home by 2025, which is an increase of 16.8 million pre-pandemic rates. So these remote workers have that ability to really work anywhere. So choosing more affordable places to live, more rural, less costly cities like Toronto, Vancouver, New York, San Francisco are another significant driver of growth in some of these smaller centers, so 100,000 population and underneath. Digitization and the COVID-19 pandemic. So the expectations of everybody has changed, from being able to order food to be and have it arrive at your door, jumping on Amazon, ordering anything you want, and it shows up the next day. The same has changed us with the COVID pandemic in terms of moving our adoption forward. There's a study that was put out that the expectation is that we've roughly moved about 5 years forward in about 8 weeks when the COVID pandemic hit. to moving into more of that digital adoption or digital world. And when asked, 75% of people using digital channels for the first time indicated that they would continue to use them when things return to normal or pre-pandemic. So additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic caused significant processing delays related to permitting, combined with an increased demand for permits. So we had this demand that was there, and all of a sudden, because majority of municipalities were paper-based, it exposed where there was a bit of a gap in technology for sure. And that's been a big driver for, we need to make that change in the event that maybe something else potentially happens. So the end result, there's increased expectations from citizens and developers for more streamlined and digital solutions to permitting. And hence the rise of these online solutions like ePermitting that you're seeing out in the marketplace. Baby boomers retirements and the labor gap. So much like our organization or any organization around the world, there is an exodus of baby boomers from the workforce. There's by 2030, the stats are saying close to 1 in 4 Canadians will be a retired senior, up 17% from the population in 2020. So the other part, and we're seeing this quite a bit, is the lack of resources to replace retired professionals. In dealing with some of our clients, we certainly saw that with either inspectors, chief building officials, really seeing an overburdened or workforce, and they had that ability to bring in the professionals that are required to deal with this increased demand in some of the permitting and the increasing demand for that digitization as well. So it's also in certain jurisdictions, in certain areas, it becoming the law. So in 2023, the Canadian federal government implemented the Community Services Recovery Fund, kicked off a $400 million investment for organizations to modernize and adapt to the long-term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So not necessarily it's the law, but they certainly saw that there needed to be a change, and they were putting money towards that to the tune of $400 million to improve and modernize the systems that local municipalities were able to deliver and offer to citizens. In 2021, the Florida House of Representatives actually passed bills 1059 and 667, which required 1059 local governments to provide access to relevant permitting documentation from their website. And 667 requires Florida municipal governments to have a means for citizens to request inspections online. And they're also imposing new deadlines for the amount of time it's required for a permit to be processed. Similar to Canada and Ontario specifically, we certainly have turnaround times for when an application is submitted to when it does need to be issued. And this is really all just to speed up the construction of new homes to help deal with the housing crisis that we seem to be dealing with here. So who benefits the most from ePermitting? Certainly, communities of all sizes can and should consider leveraging an ePermitting solution to navigate the growing influx of permit applications and the waves of seasonal construction projects. Particularly, we're seeing it. A lot of the larger communities had a solution or some form of a solution in place. Typically, 100,000 population and below is where there was a larger reliance on more of a manual process for processing building permits and any type of permit, really. So smaller municipalities where the growing trend of either baby boomers or work from home migration, you're starting to see that influx. And you've seen a real increase in the number of permits that you're processing. If that trend is continuing, there's likely a tipping point where managing it manually to having a digital solution starts to really make some sense. So what are the things to look at and consider when you're assessing the need for an ePermitting solution? So really what it's looking at is what's your current versus future request volume. So as I just said, if you're starting to really see that demand change where you are getting an increase in growth. You're having some economic tailwinds as an impact of that. Your population, you're projecting an increase there. You want to start to really look at that and have that as a consideration. The other part is internally, administrative teams certainly are dealing with, for the most part, are overwhelmed or at the max with that they can handle. There's potentially some backlog with permit applications when we're seeing the time to respond or time to produce or approve an application being at 10 weeks, 12 weeks. That obviously there's a bit of a demand or a backlog that's sitting there that we're not able to handle in some cases. So is that something, if we see more permits coming in, does that exacerbate that even further? So that's where we need to look at that and something to consider. And that's where the digital solution automates pieces of that process to help you get through those applications faster. So human capital and staffing shortages. So whether the issues resource shortages for an aging workforce reaching retirement, administrative teams can quickly become overwhelmed, certainly without a proper solution in place. The labor shortages that we're certainly seeing in some communities, I'm sure it's larger in some versus others. We're seeing it here with our organization where certain positions are difficult to fill, and the professionals that do these roles aren't necessarily always there and available or able to move or jump ship from one community to the next. So it also results in these wait times. Ultimately, you're resulting in unhappy either clients or applicants or citizens. And for employees, it becomes frustrating when everything is manual. So that's something to certainly be considering as well. As an impact on keeping people internally that are your staff, but also making sure you're delivering a level of service to your citizens. So applicant and employee experience. So the traditional pen and paper, as we all know, we've put a few points in here, it can be inefficient, inconvenient. You have to write it down. You have to come into the town hall, submit that through. For an applicant, it's a lot more work, especially with the demand and the expectation for things to be available digital. I do it on my phone, my laptop, very different expectations from people now. There's longer wait times, and it's in general, in comparison to using a digital solution, certainly a poorer experience for both the applicant and also the employee. And I think that's something that's missed here is the employee actual engagement with it and their experience. And one of the sort of notes and studies that we looked at was when employees feel more motivated and productive, they're more likely to complete their project. Their highly engaged employees then result in a 41% reduction in absenteeism and a 17% increase in productivity. So if you have someone who's enjoying what they're doing, they have systems in place and tools in place that make their job more efficient, easier, you're going to actually get more bang for buck out of that actual person, in addition to the added improvement when you're using a digital solution. So at the end of the day, from the clients that we've seen make the transition, there's a very noticeable change in employee sort of demeanor and their approach, in addition to the feedback that they're receiving from citizens that are able to now submit these types of applications online. Budgets and economic growth. So again, if you do anticipate a need to do the same degree of work with fewer resources as staff retires, then the investment certainly starts to really make a lot of sense. It automates processes. It reduces the need for manual human processes. And looking more broadly, the faster permits can be processed, the faster development projects and applications and permits can be processed. They can get out, they can start doing the work. The money is being collected by the local government, and overall economic activity related to construction continues to move forward. So in general, the more you can get through permits wise that makes sense, or development applications, it really has a pretty substantial impact on the community as a whole. So what are some of the things, if you are looking for a solution, what are some of the software features to look out for? So we've tried to highlight some major pieces, certainly that we start to see, that we're hearing from clients where they're saving a lot of time and effort. And certainly payment processing becomes one of those activities. So being able to collect fees online throughout the application processing journey becomes a pretty major component, not having to either come in or call in to give a credit card, mail a check. If they're able to just pay online right then and there, you're going to start to see an improvement and in your process and the amount of time that you're spending on just that task alone. Being able to notify citizens and developers about upcoming payments with links to complete that in a portal of some form. Instantly issue receipts, view payment history, any clarity around payments for administrators, and real-time knowledge if fees have been paid in full. So basically, it's look for something. You may have an existing payment gateway that you're using for even your Parks and Rec, for booking ice or something like that. Can you use that system, and can you integrate with that? Or do you need something else that has then that full integration component that goes with a permitting system? On-the-go mobile access. So imperative for inspectors. So being able to, instead of the pen and paper out in the field, to be able to pull in different records for the property, previous violations, past inspections, task lists, it starts to really add consistency to the approach that your community is taking with those inspections. There is then there is full documentation, there's photos, there's pictures. This to me is a pretty substantial component to an effective ePermitting solution, where you're really enabling your inspectors out in the field to do their job, and also have the basically the data that they need to do that job even more effectively than they potentially were. And you also have greater accuracy, a greater transparency, and communication back to actually the customer, because it's all digitized and you can have that communication. So automation and customization. So part of our experience with our clients in dealing with this is, not everybody, I wish everybody did it the same, but certainly they don't. Every municipality has a slightly different approach or process that they're utilizing. And you want to be able to accommodate or be able to find a system that allows you to customize, whether that's your letters that you're sending out, your notifications, the ability to build out different templates, your fees, your refundable fees, your development charges. So it should support a whole bunch of different options that are there, including if you do work with either any regional governments or county levels, if there's something there, have that ability to also accommodate some of that. Your inspectors, how do they work with developers or applicants directly? That automation and customization, as much as there's the building code and everything that's across the board, there are always nuances to the ways that each of our clients that we've seen are tackling this and doing it, certainly from the fees side of things, certainly from when they want to have as their internal reviews to move through this. Those become really critical components. So that flexibility of a systemized system to automate, but also have that customization, is an important piece to start to look out for. Agile and scalable. So if you're moving from paper, it's a big jump to go from, here's what we've typically done. It's a culture change as well to move from that into, we're going to now digitize this. So it might not be you go after everything all at once, licensing, building permits, other permits, planning. It may be where you want to stage that and build into that, or phase that through. So when you're looking at a platform, I think always look long-term, to the point where okay, if we did want to start building permits, well, what happens if we're doing sign permits, pool permits? Where do we deal with those? What happens with our business licenses or animal licenses? Do we want to have that in a similar platform? Do we want to, when we get into then the larger developments or planning applications, how do we want to deal with that? So I think as a whole, you have to look at building, permitting, planning, licensing as a solution. Doesn't mean you have to do it all at once, but certainly that should be some consideration when you're going out to market. How can I grow with this system and continue to expand what we're either using or not using within the same application? As you know, and I'm sure some of you experienced, if different applications here and there, if you start to look at that, it can become very expensive long term if you're trying to do different integrations or have to buy this one, then this one, then this one. That can become fairly expensive, certainly longer term. So, and finally, training and ongoing support. So when we're working with our clients, it's more of a partnership. We're looking for success, and that certainly needs to be something you're asking when you're considering or looking at different vendors. What's the training look like? What is the ongoing support like? Is there continual development of the system to improve or add additional features into? It's certainly a big component of what you should be considering and looking at as for a vendor. That vendor should really be that partner that's there. And once you do go live, what does that post-implementation sort of support look like? Because there is that change, and inevitably you can test everything as much as possible, but there's something that, we need to make a change. And that ongoing or post-implementation support becomes a real critical component to making sure both internal staff are comfortable, and then as well as citizens, as they start to utilize and submit digital applications, you want to make sure they're comfortable and getting the best experience they can. A solution built for success. So what I'm going to run through, certainly PSD Citywide, one of the solutions within our platform is citywide permitting, planning, licensing done faster, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through some of the key features within our application that lets you look at, consider. It just certainly relates to the things that you should be looking for, but I'll provide a little bit more context just based on the experience we've had with several of our clients. So being able to streamline your operations with one sort of scalable solution, experience best-in-class software implementation. So you certainly, as I said, you want to look at and have a partner that's able to deal with the different nuances and things that you want to have happen within your workforce or your workflows. What are your internal reviews? How can we eliminate certain manual processes? And how can we make sure we're improving that communication with our applicants, and an area to certainly manage your fees, development charges, refundable, and payment. So being able to bring that payment into this, it then becomes that full end-to-end solution. So I submit my application, I see what my fees are. Internally, staff start to go through the reviews, and once it's approved, they can request that payment, and that payment can be made and you're downloading either your license or your permit card. So easier, better, faster, better. So automating your processes to save time and elevate the employee and applicant experience. So the thing that we focused on the most in designing something was we want to make this easy for internally staff to be able to deal with what you need to for the different reviews that need to happen. How do I specify and make sure all the required documents have been attached? How do I circulate documents both internally and externally? Giving users yourselves the ability to create custom templates. So letters that you're needing to send out or notifications, building those out so that you can mass either generate letters. That becomes a really critical component and a big piece to try to take away some of those really manual processes of creating mailers or letters that need to go out. well, what if I could create that list and generate that out of the system? You're going to intuitively or naturally then get better levels of service for certainly your citizens. As we said, people are now used to jumping on the phone and having that instant gratification of going in and looking at or being able to submit an application, buy something with a swipe of a finger, order food, it shows up on my porch. That's just the world that we've certainly become accustomed to. So reducing those wait times, getting those applications processed faster, allowing staff to generate and customize and have a consistent approach ends up becoming a really critical component of this and some of the things that we've looked at when we were developing certainly our solution. I mentioned the mobile app at the beginning. This to me is a huge time saver for sure. Being able to schedule inspections, being able to attach notes out in the field, attach documents or images on the go, being able to pass fail your inspections in the field and directly email that report and that report directly to either the contractor that's there, the homeowner. That's a huge change and a huge difference to be able to have that ability. The pictures are attached. If there's any deficiencies that are noted, they're there. They're not just written down and you move on and the next inspection happens. You have to close out then that deficiency to then continue to move forward, and they're all noted. The ability to be out in the field and doing a current inspection and actually see and view past inspection details. And if there's anything that you notice, that doesn't look right. Let's go take a look at the previous inspection to see if that was caught. So it gives you that flexibility to go back and look at that. Everything you see then is on a map, and it allows you to stay synced up in real time back with the team that's back in the office. So this for us in chatting with and dealing with some of the inspectors that we have as clients that are using this out in the field, this was a big change for them to go from pen and paper to mobile, but we've tried to intuitively keep it a very, very clean design, very straightforward in terms of being able to pass, fail inspections, mark deficiencies, take pictures, do your notes, and then email who you need to email with that final inspection report. So this was one of those pieces that I think no matter what you're looking at in terms of a solution, that mobile component and an effective app for out in the field becomes a really big component for sure. Okay, so certainly the Citywide portal is something that you want to look at. So allowing your community to quickly submit building permits or applications, planning applications, licensing applications online. This is a pretty major component of any solution, whether that's our Citywide solution or another. The biggest piece when we look at a citizen or a portal is the flexibility of that portal. So what does it look like when you're going to implement that? How easy is it for then in terms of intuitiveness and user friendliness for the citizen, as well as internally for staff? So how do you manage users? How is it that if you want to make changes to either a workflow, a process, you want to add a new application type in there, how does that happen? Do you need to go to the vendor, back to a vendor? Can you do that and right through the user interface of the application to be able to enhance and make changes to your process as you grow and move with the solution? And I think that's an important part to consider is there's lots of different options out there for e-permits or online portals for your citizens. How does it function and look for the citizen? Is it intuitive? Is it easy? Is it saving them time? Are they using it? So you want them to use it. You don't want to launch something and it doesn't have that user friendliness to it. Is it pre-calculating fees for quick processing? Can they do their payments through that? Are they getting notifications? Can they stay up to date and go log in, take a look at where that process or where that application is in the process and what's working well? sending out requests to say, hey, you didn't submit this, or you need to make an adjustment to this drawing. You need to have an engineering stamp on this. So all of that can then happen through a portal, but you want to make sure those are the types of things that you're looking for or asking for. And then internally, that's where you really want to understand, how do we make changes to our portal to serve the citizen better as our business and our demands change, or there's new regulation, there's a change to the building code. How do we make sure we're able to accommodate that without always having go back to the vendor? You need to have some type of flexibility to be able to control that portal yourself through the either interface of the actual desktop application. So when looking at certainly the licenses side of things, collecting all the required information online, being able to, and looking at easily communicate and keep everyone on the same page, and being able to send internal and external notifications for renewals. You can set that up, control that, renewing those online, and being able to run custom reports based on those license types. Those all become a real critical component to not only the building permits, but the licensing should be that consideration when looking at a system. And that speaks to we look for a system that probably you're able to grow into and add on either additional modules like the licensing module, like a planning module, building permits, if you're dealing with sign permits, other permits. So what's the layout? How do you deal with all permit or applications that are coming into the municipality? With licenses, it's a bit of an easier process than the building permit process, but it's still, you want that flexibility with your workflow. You have fees associated with licenses. Internally, you have reviews that need to happen, and whether or not those can be approved. You'd have inspections that would go with some of the licenses, and you want that to be automated, again, from application to it being approved to being able to pay, and then I can download my license. The planning side is obviously a major component, and a lot of the talk around there with the housing crisis is, how do we get more housing built faster? The planning process, from my experience in dealing with our clients, certainly has a lot of, I don't think it's necessarily red tape, but a lot of the controls around it that it does slow that process down. Different things like managing pre-consult meetings and tracking that, ability to create custom workflows. So there's a very substantial difference between what would be, say, a minor variance or a planning application for a minor variance versus a plan of subdivision. So being able to customize and create different workflows for different planning applications is a really critical component to look at. What are mandatory input fields? What are the required documentation and instructions around that? Really moving to a digital solution, you're trying to offload and provide as much flexibility as possible to the citizen, and putting that work on the citizen versus your staff having to manually take from paper and input that then into a system. So if there's instructions, there's clear ability to go through and create, actually, even in the portal, an interesting question would be, can you create a draft? There's a lot to submitting a large planning application. A lot would likely get started, work through some things, get a couple of the documents or required things attached, and then save it and want to come back to that, and then pick it up and continue on. So that's an important question to ask when you, certainly on the planning side. And you're naturally going to get, when you have a process then or a template in place, you're going to have improved data and data management, and be able to customize and analyze different reports and trends easier when you have that consistency that's across the board. World-class support. So one of the things that our company sort of strives itself on and prides itself on is providing that a level of support that I would expect. And that's a bit of a differentiator for us, is if there's an issue, if there's a request for, hey, it'd be nice if it could do X, or can we create a report? Those are things that we certainly take and provide that back to our programmers to be able to continue to evolve and grow the system and grow with you as well. And that's a big initiative and a big piece of what we stand for as a company. To try to support, so the ongoing post-implementation support or support journey and providing guides, newsletters, demos, videos, user group sessions, the ability to learn from colleagues at these user sessions is great. So how are you doing it and what's working well? How are you doing it? What's working well? And then ongoing and tailored training courses. So those are just some of the things that we try to work with our clients on. This is a partnership versus you bought my stuff, great, but it's more of a partnership, and we're invested in this as well and want to see you be successful as a corporation. And municipal software advisory services that move communities forward, everything you need under one roof. So this is just a quick look at, we have a whole citywide platform or suite of solutions. Today, we are looking at the citywide permitting solution, which includes licensing, planning, building permits, mobile application, portal, payments, sort of all those pieces combined. But in addition, when we look at our enterprise or our whole platform, we do have citywide assets, so asset management, we have GIS, citywide budgeting, so operating capital, salary plan, and then a full maintenance management system to deal with service requests, work orders, preventative maintenance. There's a route patrol piece in there, full mobile app built in. So when looking at with our clients that we've grown with, it's the ability to get into a solution, and it could be with budgeting to start, could be with permitting, maintenance, assets, it doesn't matter. But thinking about that ability to grow in that department, but then start to branch out into other areas of the organization, I think becomes an important piece and something that we strive ourselves on, certainly having a different solution or a platform out there that brings a lot to the table. I do appreciate everybody sitting through today. One of the things that we'll be following up in your email will be a free copy of our ebook. So that will be something to look forward to following today's presentation. And thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And that's it.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you watching this MW webinar. Don't forget to find this episode's sponsor, PSD Citywide, and expert speaker, Matthew Dawe, on LinkedIn. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.